Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning and good afternoon for you all. We are in the permanent mission of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, very honored to host this high-level panel that will discuss the climate change, the role of national initiatives in protecting the environment globally. Climate change is one of the most significant environmental challenges faced by societies today. It has substantial implications on energy, food and water security, health and safety for countries and people worldwide. This has led to the need for new policies and partnerships to expand the scope of current efforts to combat climate change and address this growing challenge. At the beginning of the 48th session of the Human Rights Council, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ms. Michelle Bachelet, described the triple planetary crises of climate change, pollution, and nature loss as the biggest threat to human rights globally. And they will constitute the single greatest challenge to human rights of our era, end quote. Due to its leadership role, geographical location, and regional and international responsibilities, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has launched the Saudi and Middle East Green Initiatives on the 23rd of October 2021 as a part of its commitment to saving the planet, with a clear roadmap which began during its G20 presidency last year and consistent with Vision 2030. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has oriented its actions through planning, implementation, and reinforcing specific programs to achieve the different goals envisaged in the 2030 Agenda and in the Saudi Vision 2030. Today, we aim to address the need for new policies to expand efforts for environmental challenges faced by societies, highlight the impact of national initiatives in achieving global goals to combat climate change, exchange views on lessons learned and difficulties towards achieving this initiative, discuss the human rights to enjoy a clean and healthy environment. The permanent mission of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Geneva is honored to host this virtual high-level panel to discuss how to achieve the global targets in combating climate change and initiatives taken by states, including Saudi Arabia, and its contribution to environmental protection and human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome our speakers. Professor Petteri, TAALAS, Secretary General of the WMO. Dr. Ayman GHULAM, CEO, National Center for Metrology. Ambassador Asim Ahmed, the permanent representative of the Maldives missions here in Geneva. Dr. Mohammed QURBAN, CEO, National Center for Wildlife Development. Dr. Khaled AL-ABDULKADER, CEO, National Center for Vegetation, Cover Development and Compact Desertification. Dr. Hany, SHAER, IUCN, Regional Director, West Asia. And Ms. Noura ALISSA, Senior International Policy Analyst, Ministry of Energy of Saudi Arabia. To start our panel, we will play a short and very informative video.
For millennia, we wrote our stories on the world, line by line, from our ancestral homes to our high-tech cities. We kept building towards a better future. And the Earth kept giving. Today, we're on the front line, committed to giving back, for each other, for our grandchildren, for the world. Together, we drive action and chart a path for protecting the planet. We will mobilize knowledge and resources from all engines of economy, government, and society. We will invest, innovate, and imagine, breaking the lines tying us to an unsustainable way of life. We will continue working towards a better future. This is the Saudi Green Initiative, a new era of action.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, from Geneva, Professor Petteri, TAALAS, the Secretary General of the WMO. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
First of all, Mr. Ambassador, I would like to congratulate you for this event, and also I would like to congratulate your government for showing interest towards climate mitigation, which is nowadays a global challenge, and we are just coming out of the COP26 meeting, and I think that we were all pleased to notice that also Saudi Arabia has announced its intention to become carbon neutral by 2050. I'm coming from WMO, and we are a scientific and technical organization, and I would like to show you some slides what we know about climate change. So I will share my screen with you. So my own background is I have been Secretary General here for the past 6 years, and before that I have also scientific background, and I also used to work in the board of directors of an energy company, so I know it also from that perspective how challenging climate mitigation is. From WMO side, we are a specialized agency on weather, climate, and water. And in case of climate, we are dealing with science, and we have founded IPCC, and we are co-hosting it today. And I'm also very much interacting with Secretary General Guterres, who has established his own climate core group. I will show you what we know from about climate change so far, and we have to deal with the climate system, which you can see on this graph, and I will show you some individual observations that we have made during recent years. We are reporting on the status of climate on annual basis and status of greenhouse gases, and we work together with some other UN and international organizations in doing so. So last 5 years have been the warmest year on record, and we have especially seen warming in the Arctic area, but also Europe and Middle East, including Saudi Arabia. They have been among areas which have been warming more than the global average. And this last 150 years period is unusual. We can go back only 2,000 years by using indirect observations, and we have already been demonstrating that we have exceeded the normal variability which existed for the past 100,000 years with this ice age variation. And we have broken records in main greenhouse gas concentrations. Carbon dioxide is, of course, the most important one. And despite of the emission drops by 5.6% last year, we saw an increase of the carbon dioxide concentration. And so was the case for two other important greenhouse gases, methane and nitrous oxide. And out of those, the most important greenhouse gas is clearly carbon dioxide, which has contributed 2/3 of the warming so far, and its lifetime is several hundreds of years. So this problem doesn't go away quickly if we let the concentration to rise to a certain level. Methane is number 2. It has contributed about 1/6 of the warming, but its lifetime is only 11 years. And so that's basically an easier problem to solve as compared to carbon dioxide. And this is what has happened since 1850 in the carbon budget. And you can see this gray area, which is demonstrating that the fossil sources of carbon has become the dominant one. Land use used to be important until 50s, but now it's about 14% of the problem. And then oceans are serving as a sink of carbon, and lands, especially forests, are serving as a sink, and the rest remains in the atmosphere. And we have stored more than 90% of the heat to oceans, and all of the oceans have started warming, and also the sea level rise has been boosting. This warming has led to thermal expansion of the seawater, and also glacier melting has contributed to that. And then we have seen changes in the chemical composition of the seawater. It has become more acid because we have injected more carbon dioxide to the seawater. We have seen a boost in glacier melting, and glaciers are giving energy, water for many major rivers worldwide, for example, in India, China, Latin America, and also North America. And this is also contributing to the sea level rise, and this will be the dominant factor when we think of the future of sea level rise. And sea level rise used to be about 2 millimeters per year 20 years ago, and recently we have seen numbers which are exceeding 4 millimeters per year, and also the Arabic Peninsula is sensitive to these kind of changes. And IPCC estimated what may happen by the end of this century, and the numbers are a bit higher than they used to be. So if we would reach 1.5 degrees, we could see about ½ meter sea level rise besides the current about 26 centimeters rise. And if we totally fail with the climate mitigation, we could see numbers up to 1 meter. And this sea level rise will continue for the coming hundreds of years because we already have such a high concentration of carbon dioxide. The melting of the glaciers continue. And in case of 2 degrees, we could reach from ½ meter to 3.5 meters by 2300. And if we fail with mitigation, the numbers could be from 2 meters up to 7 meters, and in the worst case, even 15 meters if the melting of Antarctic glacier would take place in a speedier manner. We have seen changes in the global precipitation during the past 100 years, and this grayish area indicate areas which have become drier, and also Saudi Arabia is one of those areas where you can see brownish color, which means less rainfall. And Africa in general, and also central parts of Asia have become drier than they used to be in the past. More than half of the global population have been exposed to major natural disaster during the past 10-20 years, and most common has been flooding with 2 billion people, and drought about 1.5 billion people, and we have seen an increase in both of those due to climate change, and the economic losses have been growing also very rapidly because of that impact. And for example, this year we have seen very severe heat wave hitting Western United States and Canada, and then also we saw severe flooding event in Germany, and it has been shown that these events would not have been possible without the impact of climate change. IMF has estimated that the current about 1 degree warming has already had a negative impact on economies in large parts of the world, in Southern Hemisphere and low latitudes of Northern Hemisphere, including Arabic Peninsula, and the high northern latitudes have gained higher temperatures and more precipitation there. This is from the IPCC report 3 years ago, thinking of these emission pathways towards Paris limits 1.5 and 2 degrees, and for 1.5 we should bend this emission growth curve in coming 5 years and become carbon neutral by 2050. And to reach 2 degrees, we should bend this emission growth curve in 20 years and become carbon neutral by 2070. And the good news is that the worst case scenarios, 3 to 5 degrees, they are no more likely because we have already been able to reduce emissions. And this is a scenario for the future, and especially this lower part is more interesting. It's showing what is the expected change in soil moisture as a function of warming 1.5, 2 degrees, and 4 degrees warming. And in all of the cases, one can see that, for example, both America's Mediterranean region, parts of Africa and parts of Asia and Australia are becoming drier, which is bad news for global agriculture. And this is an estimation of what would happen if we would reach 3 degrees warming and to the global crop yield. And you can see that we have lots of reddish color, which indicate that agricultural conditions would become worse and we would lose yield, and the green areas would gain because of higher temperatures and precipitation. And those gaining regions, they are not the most optimal for food production, so we would lose food production capacity of the planet. And we have water stress hotspots. We are also dealing with water resources, and you can see that Middle East is one of the hotspots, Mediterranean region, several parts of Africa, and also the big economies in Asia, both China and India, where the origin of the fresh water is from Himalayan glaciers. We are going to get less and less water to the main rivers, and also the west coast of both Americas and part of Australia are sensitive to that change. And the population growth, if you overlay this water availability and population growth, one can see that there are areas which are especially risky, and that's Africa, Middle East, and also southern parts of Asia. So this population growth is also one of the challenges that we should keep in mind. And finally, I would like to say a few words about the emissions, how the emissions look like. The G7 countries, including European Union, they contribute about 33% of the emissions, and so-called BRICS countries contribute about 47% of the emissions, and emissions have been especially growing in China and also in non-OECD countries. And the last COP meeting, the richest countries were indicating ambitious targets for this decade, but the rest we still have some challenges. We are not on the way towards 1.5 to 2 degrees targets. And this is our challenge. This is all energy used for energy production, industry, and transport. And at the moment, it's 85% fossil and only 15% nuclear, hydro, and renewables. And if we want to be successful in climate mitigation, we should revert those numbers during the coming decades. And this is the vision of the European Union to reduce emissions by 90% by 2050 and enhance the carbon sinks a bit, and also start using carbon removal technologies which are not very mature at the moment. And the big sectors are power production, transport, and industry, and then there are others, residential, and agriculture. But these big sectors are the key for mitigation. And if you look at the global consumption, there are plenty of products that, for example, China is producing, and they are mostly consumed in rich countries in Europe, North America, and Japan. So that's again, rich countries are contributing to that. And same is true for fossil energy. Arabic countries, Russia especially, are producing fossil energy, and they are also consumed in in the richest countries. So that's not only a problem for the producers, but it's very much a challenge on the consumer side. We have seen already positive development. The 32 countries have been able to decouple the economic growth and emission growth. There has been a drop of emissions in many European countries like Denmark, UK, Finland, and at the same time there has been economic growth. So it's not impossible to decouple them. And this is where we are today. While coming out of Glasgow COP meeting, we are aiming towards 3 degrees to 2.5 degrees warming, not yet towards 1.5 to 2 degrees. So there's a need to raise the level of ambition if we would like to reach the Paris limits. And finally, a couple of political dimensions of this. Agriculture is going to be a sector which is going to be hit by climate change, and is already hit, and Africa, Mediterranean region, both Americas, India and China are sensitive to that, and we are going to lose agricultural production capacity. World economy, it has been demonstrated that the consequences of climate change, they are much more expensive than the costs needed for successful mitigation, and then oil and gas dependent economies. That's not an easy case for Russia and for the Arabic countries, and transition towards non-fossil economy is a challenge. That's fair to say. And Africa is perhaps the most challenging continent, where the population growth is also enhancing the challenge, and economies, employment, and food security, they are all based on rain-fed agriculture. And in Europe, the southern part is most risky one, and also this immigration has been a sensitive issue for European Union countries. With these words, thanks again for organizing this event, and we are most happy to collaborate with Saudi Arabia and its mission here in Geneva. Thanks a lot, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you so much, SG, for this excellent presentation. And now joining us from Jeddah, Dr. Ayman GHULAM, CEO, National Center for Metrology. Dr. GHULAM, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon from Jeddah local time. And it is my pleasure to be in this very important panel hosted by the Saudi mission in Geneva. Especially thanks for Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Saudi mission in Geneva. Indeed, climate change, as we know, it is very significant environmental issue. And last summer, we saw, or we observed 50 degrees centigrade in Canada. And also we saw some flooding in India, Oman. Tropical cyclones are affecting Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Omani lands. And also we saw dust storm in green Europe. So these are very good signs for climate change, which is now being grown dramatically in global scale. Honestly speaking, from the National Center of Metrology, as we know, this is the climate change is based on science, as His Excellency the SG, Professor Petteri said. And indeed, here, when we see these signs, the societies, the government should take actions. Saudi Arabia government indeed took the action, and maybe last month we held 2 significant events. One of them is Saudi Green, and the other one is the regional or the Middle East Green as well. And at that particular event, His Highness the Royal Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman announced several initiatives, and 3 of them belong to or owned by the National Center of Metrology. So now I present those 3 initiatives, which are owned by the National Center of Metrology, and I will share my screen if you allow me.
تفضل.
Is it clear in your screen appear?
Yes, it is clear. Go ahead.
So I will use his Highness, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, when he said, "We will lead the next green era." And actually, this is not a statement. This is an action, and we are seriously going in it. So when we talk about the goals of our initiatives, we are talking about contribute to reducing carbon emissions from oil, also reclaiming for 200 million hectares of degraded lands, and also we are planting 50 billion trees across the Middle East, 10 billion trees within Saudi Arabia. The strategic initiatives objectives are innovate future solution to climate issues, environmental supervision, and also knowledge of transfer. If we go to the three initiatives, as I mentioned, which are owned by the National Center of Metrology, the first important one is establishing the Regional Climate Change Center. And this is a video, although it is in Arabic, but there is translation.
البرنامج الإقليمي للتغير المناخي مدى تأثر الطقس والمناخ بالتشجير بمبادرة السعودية الخضراء ومبادرة الشرق الأوسط الأخضر على المستويين المحلي والإقليمي، سيوضع الإطار التحليلي والنموذجي لدراسة موارد الطاقة المتجددة مثل الرياح والطاقة الشمسية وغيرها وتأثيراتها على انبعاثات الكربون في ظل سيناريوهات مختلفة لتغير المناخ في المستقبل. هذه المبادرة لها ثلاثة تأثيرات مباشرة وغير مباشرة على المملكة العربية السعودية. أولاً التأثير الاجتماعي والذي سيخفف من المخاطر الناجمة عن التأثيرات الحالية للتغير المناخي ويرفع مستوى الوعي بين جميع شرائح المجتمع بشأن الآثار المتوقعة لتغير المناخ والخطط التي وضعتها الدولة لمواجهة ذلك. ثانياً التأثير البيئي الذي سيساعد على إيجاد طرق موارد طبيعية وبيئية لمواكبة آثار التغير المناخي وتقليل التدهور الناجم عنه، تعزيز الأداء البيئي للمملكة مع الالتزام بأحكام الاتفاقيات الدولية ذات الصلة. المحور الثالث التأثير الاقتصادي الذي يخفف من الآثار الناجمة عن التغير المناخي على القطاعات الاقتصادية والتنموية، يحفز الصناعات للحد من الانبعاثات وتوطين الصناعات الصديقة للبيئة. مبادرة إنشاء المركز الإقليمي للتغير المناخي في التنبؤ بتأثير كل من مبادرة السعودية الخضراء ومبادرة الشرق الأوسط الأخضر على انبعاثات الكربون والطاقة المتجددة ومناخ المملكة العربية السعودية.
Yeah, indeed, to conclude, what is in that video, the centers, the climate change, the Regional Climate Change Center provides tools and information to help Saudi Arabia to cope with changing climate now and in the future. Also, it collects, develops, and shares the climate scenarios and research to facilitate sound decision-making in the kingdom and the region. The center will assist also in the development of climate information services in national basis, regional, and global, with the aim of mitigating the climate-related disasters and contributing to sustainable. We have indeed initiative role or the role of this climate change, Regional Climate Change Center is develop and share climate science research and also assist the development of climate information services in the national and regional and global levels and also scientific support in the Green Saudi Initiative and the Green Middle East Initiative. If we go to the second initiative, which belongs to National Center of Metrology, is establishing the Regional Center for Early Warning of Dust and Sandstorm Initiative. And we will see a short video of that initiative.
تقوم مبادرة إنشاء المركز الإقليمي للإنذار المبكر من العواصف الغبارية والرملية بعمل الدراسات والأبحاث الخاصة بظاهرة العواصف الغبارية والرملية، وذلك لإصدار التقارير والتوقعات المتوسطة وطويلة المدى. بناء على معايير المنظمة العالمية للأرصاد سيتم اعتماد المركز، وسيدعم المركز الخطط الوطنية لجميع القطاعات لمواجهة تلك الظواهر وتقليل المخاطر والآثار الناجمة عنها. سيكون تركيز أبحاث ودراسات المركز في البحث عن مصادر الغبار والتقلبات الخاصة بهذه الظواهر ومدى ارتباطها بالتغير المناخي. هناك ممكنات لعمل المركز بتواجد منظومة متكاملة لرصد الظواهر الغبارية والرملية على المستوى الوطني والإقليمي عبر زيادة التغطية الجغرافية لمحطة الرصد والمراقبة. المبادرة سيكون لها تأثيرات مباشرة وغير مباشرة على المملكة العربية السعودية. من الأمثلة في القطاع الصحي ستسهم المبادرة في رفع الجاهزية للمستشفيات والمراكز الصحية لمجابهة أمراض الجهاز التنفسي. في القطاع الزراعي التقارير والتوقعات الصادرة من المركز ستقلل من آثار الغبار على المحاصيل الزراعية. في القطاع الثروة الحيوانية وذلك عبر المساهمة في تقليل الخسائر والحد من الأضرار التي تؤثر على البنية التحتية. وفي قطاع النقل فالمبادرة لها أثر كبير في الحد والتقليل من آثار الظواهر الغبارية والرملية على هذا القطاع. وتسهم المبادرة بتحقيق أهداف مبادرة السعودية الخضراء في ضمان واستدامة الموارد الحيوية وحماية البيئة من المخاطر الطبيعية.
And if we conclude what is in that video, the scope of the initiative is establishing regional center for early warning dust storm to study and analyze the meteorological data and early warning of dust and dust storms. This will be done through establishment and operation of center managing the data information related to dust and sandstorms, preparing short, long-term studies and expectations, and also the supporting the preparation and implementation of the national plan to adapt and through the research and study changes of dust and sandstorm phenomena. And also, if we go to initiative role, improve the security of the accuracy, of numerical model for dust prediction, increasing the geographical coverage of meteorological stations at the national level, and strengthening the participation of sectors and stakeholders at the regional level. And the third and last initiative belongs to the National Center of Meteorology is Regional Cloud Seeding Program. And we will see a short video.
يساعد الاستمطار الصناعي في تعديل الطقس بهدف تغيير كمية الأمطار المتساقطة من السحب أو نوعيتها، وذلك عن طريق نصب بعض المواد في الهواء لتعمل على تكاثف السحب أو باعتبارها نوى جليدية لتكوين بلورة ثلجية في الغلاف الجوي، مما يغير العمليات الفيزيائية الدقيقة داخل السحب نفسها. ويهدف البرنامج الإقليمي للاستمطار الصناعي إلى تعزيز الدراسات العلمية المتعلقة بالفيزيائية السحب والاستفادة من التقنيات الحديثة لزيادة هطول الأمطار. كما يمكن تلخيص أثر هذه المبادرة على مناخ المملكة العربية السعودية في 5 نقاط رئيسية. أولاً، زيادة هطول الأمطار وتحقيق الاستدامة البيئية وبناء القدرات البشرية. ثانياً، التخفيف من الآثار الناجمة عن العواصف الترابية وزيادة رقعة المساحات الخضراء. ثالثاً، البحث عن مصادر مائية جديدة من شأنها أن تسهم في التخفيف من ظاهرة الجفاف وتحسين الصحة العامة. رابعاً، التخفيف من المخاطر الناجمة عن التأثيرات الحالية لتغيرات المناخ. خامساً، تهيئة الموارد الطبيعية والبيئية للتكيف مع آثار التغير المناخي وتقليل تدهورها وتعزيز الأداء البيئي للمملكة. كما يتمثل إسهام هذه المبادرة في تخفيف أهداف مبادرة الشرق الأوسط الأخضر من خلال زيادة هطول الأمطار من 10 إلى 20% من النسبة الأصلية بإذن الله تعالى.
Yeah, indeed, this is very important initiative for the National Center of Metrology, because we would like to maintain the water security and food security, and also to avoid water scarcity and drought in Saudi Arabia and the region. As we know, cloud seeding usually has been implemented in many countries as an operational cloud seeding, but in our program it will be operational and research as well. So by the regional program aims to strengthen the scientific studies on cloud physics and leveraging the network technologies to increase precipitation of clouds. And also in our program, we are aiming to develop new technology indeed for the cloud seeding program. The role of this initiative is availability of modern system and equipment that are used in program implementation, work team with experience in implementing the cloud seeding program and preparing the studies, and experimental company to manage the seeding operation in the upper atmosphere. And indeed, the most important thing is also we are having technology transfer and also build up capacity building, and we will have our Saudi citizen scientists in cloud seeding program. So in conclusion, the aspirations of these three initiatives is ensure sustainable development and strengthen cooperation and partnership and knowledge exchange. Thank you very much, and that's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Dr. GHULAM. And now we will be listening to Ambassador Asim Ahmed, the permanent representative of the Maldives in Geneva. Ambassador Ahmed, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Wasil, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for organizing this important event. We would also like to applaud the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for launching the Saudi and Middle East Green Initiative, which includes ambitious targets to improve quality of life and protect future generations by increasing reliance on clean energy, offsetting the impact of fossil fuels and thereby protecting the environment. Excellencies, there is overwhelming scientific evidence that the climate emergency would be catastrophic to humanity. It is vital that we continue to make efforts to ensure that climate action remains prominent on our national development strategy and international agenda. Small island states like the Maldives first started advocacy for 1.5 degrees over 20 years ago. Today, we are already at 1.1 degrees of warming, with further warming already locked into both our atmosphere and much of our global long-term infrastructure. As President Ibrahim Muhammad Solih said, the difference between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees is a death sentence for the Maldives. To avoid this catastrophe, it is vital to emphasize both adaptation and mitigation measures in order to meet the goals and benchmarks we set for ourselves. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we in the Maldives are on the front line of climate change, and we want to lead by example. That is why we have put forward an ambitious plan to reach net zero emissions by 2030, which we hope to achieve with international support. As part of our renewable energy strategy, we are also partnering with International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, to promote renewable technologies. We are implementing targeted holistic climate policies in recognition of the existential threat that climate change poses to small island developing states such as the Maldives. The protection of our rich biodiversity is a critical element of the government's environment protection strategy. The Maldives has continued to increase marine protected areas and species with 44 protected zones covering 500,000 hectares of marine and terrestrial areas. In our National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, we have adopted a target to promote 10% of our coral reefs and 20% of mangroves by 2025. We are also committed to protect 30% of the oceans, an international benchmark set forth to save the ocean ecosystem. Entire atolls have been designated as UNESCO protected areas. For the Maldives and for many cities, our oceans and the blue economy are the lifeline that sustains our economies. We now know that more than 11 million metric tons of plastic are flowing into the ocean each year. For this reason, on 1st June 2021, the government of Maldives has banned the import of 8 types of single-use plastics. The strategic plan, Single-Use Plastic Phase-Out Plan 2020 to 2023, is a national initiative to phase out the production, import, and consumption of certain single-use plastics into the Maldives and promote the use of sustainable alternatives in the effort to protect human health and the country's vulnerable marine environment. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, here in Geneva, at the 48th session of the Human Rights Council on 8th October 2021, adopted a landmark resolution recognizing for the first time the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right. The work on this resolution, highlighting the human rights dimension of environment and climate change, was initiated in 2020 by a core group consisting of Maldives, Costa Rica, Switzerland, Slovenia, and Morocco. This right recognizes comprehensive protection against a full range of environmental harms because it includes clean air, a safe and non-toxic environment, healthy ecosystems, sustainably produced food, and clean water, as well as adequate sanitation. In the Maldives, the right to a healthy and ecologically balanced environment is recognized in Article 23D of the Maldives Constitution. Over 155 countries already have this right recognized in their national constitutions or other legislations. We hope that this resolution would also encourage other member states to work towards recognizing it in their national legislative frameworks. Small countries like the Maldives are embracing renewables and promoting the protection of the environment, both for their fiscal benefits and to promote clean energy alternatives. But we know that small countries can go to net zero emissions, but it won't bend the global emissions curve. We need to see faster action from the bigger economies. We need to improve the ability of the international financial institutions and the multilateral system to provide adaptation funding that is predictable, accessible, and sufficient. We note the progress achieved in COP26 and call on countries to maintain the momentum towards achieving their commitments with purpose and sincerity. Maldives, as a small island developing state, is continuing to implement policies and activities to protect our environment. However, we need international solidarity and cooperation more than ever to save our planet and to achieve the sustainable development goals. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Ahmed, for sharing your insights. And now we will hear from Dr. Mohammed QURBAN, the CEO, National Center for Wildlife Development. Dr. QURBAN, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, or I don't know if it's there. Good morning, Excellency, and all the attendees here. Thank you so much for this meeting, and it's very important to explain what the National Center for Wildlife are doing for combating the climate change. I will share my screen with you, please. Are you able to see my?
Yes, yes, it's clear. Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you. Great. Okay, today I will discuss the just let me see here or not. Okay, today I will talk about the role of marine and coastal sustainable management to combat climate change. We will be focusing areas for combating climate change on 4 main areas here: establishing marine protected areas to protect habitat and ecosystem, conservation of biodiversity in the seas, as they are really important for the climate change, rehabilitation of degraded sites, sustainable use of marine resources. Let's, before that, talk about the most important habitat and biodiversity that what we have in Arabian Gulf and Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. We have the mangrove, which are there 2 types or 2 species of mangrove. Mainly in both seas we have the Avicenna marina, the black mangrove, and in Red Sea we have the Rhizophora red mangrove. The coral reef, which really the most important coral reef in the world, the 2% that found really in the Red Sea, and the species that we have over 272 species of the coral reef in Saudi Arabia. Seagrass, we have 14 species of seagrass, and those are really important and contribution highly for combating the climate change. And we have the islands, and we have more than 1,000 islands in Saudi Arabia, around 1,285 islands in Arabian Gulf and Red Sea, and those are important habitat with different type of species of plants on the land of these islands, as well as different biodiversity and ecosystem around the islands. And as well as we have the marine and coastal biodiversity, and as we know, we have around 3,800 kilometers coastline in Saudi Arabia, and we have different type of fish, more than 1,000, as well as we have the megafauna, dolphins, sharks, turtles, whales, and dugong, and all those contribute highly in this work. The National Center for Wildlife initiatives in the Green Initiative really important for the combating or reducing the climate change in Saudi Arabia. So mainly we contribute with 3 main initiatives. Number 1, the sustainable management and conservation of coastal areas environment. The second one, expansion of protected areas with integrated management. And the third one, breeding of endangered wildlife animals. Those really including both land and marine, but here we're going to focus on the marine part. Before I go through the initiatives, I will just explain something very important as scientific content, how the ocean or the marine contribute highly to the combating the climate change. By the way, it's also there as reverse. The climate change also impact on the marine life. But let us say what is the useful of those ecosystems that we have and contributing highly to reduce the climate change. So usually, if you see this diagram, you can see the carbon dioxide can go through the primary producers, what we call the phytoplankton. Those are plant-like organisms found usually on the top of the water. And this is what we found all the year, and those contribute highly to the carbon dioxide. When those plant-like died, they will sink, they will be processed through the bacteria, they will go down to sink in the bottom. For this reason, we have the high carbon budget in the deep ocean. So the ocean really contributes highly, plus the seagrass, plus the all type of plants that found on the coastal areas. So when we go through the initiatives that the center contribute in the Saudi Green Initiative, number 1, the sustainable management and conservation of coastal areas environment. And this is really important. One, the objective of this initiative is to promote conservation, coastal zone management, protection of the marine environment, and development of an overall framework to protect it through integrated coastal zone management, and how to organize activities along the coastal line and islands through the adaptation of spatial standards for the protection of coastal areas and islands. So the impact really from this one coming through the enhanced Saudi Arabian ranking marine biodiversity species index, as well as the biodiversity habitat index. Contribution and to the international goals on increasing marine protected areas. So in order to have those ones, we should have the protection and conservation of this environment. Expected to increase biomass of high tourism value fish population, reduce coral reef habitat damage, and this initiative contribute highly to SDG 14 life below water. When I go to the second one, the expansion of protected areas with integrated management. So in this initiative, the objective of this one, conserve an ecological representation of the kingdom's terrestrial, woodland, and marine bioregions, including the areas of particular importance for biodiversity and ecosystem services. Of course, in a manner that it is effectively and equitably managed, well connected and integrated into the wider landscape and seascape, and meets or surpasses the projected international target of 30% coverage of the country's terrestrial and inland water, and 30% of its marine and coastal areas. So this one really, this initiative contributes to the IUCN CPD goals to ensure protected areas coverage of 30% of land, freshwater, and ocean by 2030, enriched biodiversity, which is very important to protect, contribute to the SDG 15 life on land. The third one, breeding of endangered wildlife and animals. And here specifically, I will talk about this initiative contribute highly to breed and reintroduce any organisms in the marine life that really threatened or already endangered. And specifically, I will talk here about the coral reef, how we can really rehabilitate whatever damage of the coral reef, of course, because of the bleaching that caused by the climate change. Again, this enhanced the scientific and economic impact by establishing a genetic database and fingerprint recording of all critical endangered species. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, reintroduce endemic endangered species, contribute to the SDG 15 life on land, rehabilitation of important marine habitat, such as, of course, coral reef. This one now, the operational excellence in managing protected area and rehabilitation, and this it will help highly for managing all the protected areas that whatever I mentioned before. In conclusion, the initiatives will contribute highly to the quality of life. The marine and coastal ecosystem conservation will provide a natural way of reducing the impact of greenhouse gases on our atmosphere through the sequestration of blue carbon, enacting the new environmental policy and regulations that we have recently in Saudi Arabia in coastal and marine ecosystems and biodiversity. Finally, the sustainable management, conservation, and restoration of coastal and marine ecosystem are really important and vital for combating and reducing and combating climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you for you, Dr. QURBAN, for joining us. And now from Riyadh is Dr. Khaled AL-ABDULKADER. COO, National Center for Vegetation, Cover Development and Combat Desertification. Dr. ABDULKADER, you have the floor.
السلام عليكم حياكم الله. طبعا first of all, Your Excellency, other guests, I would like really to welcome all of you to this panel, and also to just say that in fact I'm in the move. I'm not in Riyadh now. I'm in an assignment related to one of our initiatives, but this is an important event, an important subject that really it's an honor to be with you. First of all, let me start and we shed some light on those initiatives that related to the center mission, which is the National Center for Vegetation Cover and Combating Desertification. One of the main initiatives that it is released lately and announced by Crown Prince, it is the SGI, the Saudi Green Initiative, which is really targeted to planting 10 billion trees in Saudi Arabia, and also rehabilitation of 40 million hectare in the national land. As a start of that, we already targeting to give the first phase of that big target to plant, as the Crown Prince announced, the 450 million trees. That's in the next few years. In fact, these projects already we have the mission to start these projects. We already our teams in the grounds and on starting this huge target in targeting the native trees of Saudi Arabia, targeting utilizing also the sustainable water resources, focusing and retreated and regenerated water that comes from the treated wastewater that will also targeting also the coastal areas of Saudi Arabia with a lot of trees that related to the salinity of water, such as mangrove, salt marshes, and those also dependent on the seawater for growth. As you know, this big target will have huge impact on the reduction of the temperature in the Saudi Arabia, also to reduce the dust storms, also to enhance the quality of life, and to enhance also the biodiversity of Saudi Arabia. Also, on the other hand, His Crown Prince has announced the 40 billion tree plantation on the MGI initiative, which is the Middle East Green Initiative, with the collaboration with the countries, our friends in the countries in the region, and also in the national and the international organizations. And one of my mission now in this visit to also see the ways of collaboration, contribution for our friends in different countries, how to contribute in this huge target. In the other hand, as when the Saudi Arabia last year was in charge, and also in the G20 presidency in Saudi Arabia, we have announced the international initiative for combating land degradation and habitat loss. And that's this initiative targeted to rehabilitate 50% of degraded lands in the globe by the 2040, with the support of the G20 countries, and also targeting to implement this huge and very ambitious initiative in the global scale. In the national scale, we have already started different initiatives that will contribute positively to combating the climate change. One of them is reforestation in the forest of Saudi Arabia by planting 60 million trees, native trees in the mountains of Saudi Arabia and also in the forests of Saudi Arabia by 2030. And also another initiative that will focusing on developing 50 national parks in Saudi Arabia. As we speak, we have already designated more than 300 national parks in Saudi Arabia that will contribute positively in the biodiversity and also in the quality of life and also to development of the vegetation cover of these areas. Other also initiative that it's lately released related to the vegetation cover is the management of the rangeland of Saudi Arabia. That we are targeting now for the first phase more than 8 million hectares for management of these rangeland and also rehabilitation of these areas. In addition to also, we have also started our mission for combating desertification by initiating a campaign in Saudi Arabia that started last year in October of last year by planting more than 10 million native trees in 6 months. That's really this target was contributed by the national entities, by also public sectors, by private sectors, by also NGOs, and by most of the contributors of the citizens of Saudi Arabia. This in very short term, the initiatives that we are now in charging of in the national level and also in the international levels that focusing in the vegetation cover development and that will contribute as nature-based solution to the climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khaled AL-ABDULKADER, and we wish you a successful mission overseas. Dr. Hany SHAER, IUCN Regional Director West Asia, is with us in this event. Mr. SHAER, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Abdulaziz, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you and to have some change some ideas and some actions globally and locally. So on behalf of IUCN, I would like first to thank the mission, the Saudi mission in Geneva for organizing this important event, which is needed globally and regionally and even on the local level. First, I would like to share some slides with you. Once you see it, just confirm to be sure that I'm present. Can you see it, Dr. Abdulaziz?
Yes, واضح. Yes.
First, climate change and the needed action. The extreme weather events in 2021, including catastrophic floods, heat waves, and wildfires, removes any doubt that greenhouse gas emissions from human activity are destabilizing established ways of life in developing and rich economies. This will put us all as a human in some action needed to address the climate change today, which from global perspective, IUCN is taking care about it and also link it to other challenges. Climate change is not the only challenge we have. We have also the losing of biodiversity. And the last Congress of IUCN held in France emphasized that this are not, that there's two, which I mean here, the climate change and the biodiversity loss is not separated, and they are deeply interlinked manifestation of the same crisis. The interlinked relationship between the climate change and the biodiversity loss crisis was also explicitly recognized for the very first time at the UN FCCC COP26 held in Glasgow last month. So, taking action. IUCN assesses the impact of climate change on species and ecosystem through its work on ecosystem-based mitigation, adaptation, and disaster risk reduction. It also highlights the important role of nature-based solution to climate change. It also works to ensure that climate policy and action are gender responsive, socially inclusive, and take into account to the needs of the most vulnerable. What is needed? The depth and the scale of the combined climate and biodiversity crisis require all countries to take substantial action in 3 areas. The first one, reduction of global greenhouse gas emission under urgent, sustained and deep reduction in global greenhouse gas emission across all sectors as called for by science to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, as all my colleagues mentioned. Countries need to submit more ambitious nationally and determined contribution in DCAs and long-term strategies in support of the Paris Agreement goals. They must also promote greater alignment and synergies between international processes across the UNFCCC and CBD to address climate change and biodiversity. The second one is conserving and restoring ecosystems. The critical role of protecting, conserving, and restoring nature and ecosystem in delivering benefits for both climate change adaptation and mitigation was also explicitly recognized for the first time at COP26. IUCN would therefore argue all countries to recognize the important role of this nature-based solution at the national level too, and also to include this more concretely within their nationally determined contribution, which is the NDC, and also in the national adaptation plans and the long-term low gas house emissions development strategy under the Paris, all of this under Paris Agreement. The third area, which is we are focusing globally, IUCN is focusing globally also and on regional level, is the working with nature-based. IUCN would also argue all countries to mobilize enhanced finance, including through an innovative mechanism to enable the successful implementation of nature-based solutions at scale. Today, we are here in one of these important initiatives, which is the Saudi and Middle East Green Initiative. It is important here to highlight the importance of this initiative, and the initiative is asking the nations to work together to scale up climate commitment and deliver against clear targets designed to protect the planet and ensure a positive future for our coming generation. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope that I summarized and linked it to the initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you for you, Mr. SHAER, for your participation. Finally, yet importantly, joining us from Riyadh is Ms. Noura Al-Issa, Senior International Policy Analyst, Ministry of Energy. Mr. Al-Issa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much to the mission for hosting this very, very important event at such a critical time. If you would just allow me to share my screen.
Yes, it is now on the screen.
Thank you. I think if I could just start, first of all, my name is Noura Al-Issa from the Ministry of Energy in Saudi Arabia. I think if I can have just one goal for today is to really be able to give you all the macro policy understanding of Saudi Arabia today with regards to climate change. Also from my perspective as someone that works within the ministry, frequently with bilateral and multilateral policy making related to climate, sustainability, energy policy, as well as actually being a part of the negotiating team for the kingdom that was at this last COP. So firstly, I think it's very important for us to be able to really understand the context that we are operating within. I think many speakers already touched upon this, but just to really reflect again that the magnitude of the challenge is very clear to everyone. Global temperatures are rising. The scientific community is very clear about what is needed. Global ambition needs to be increased, and this is needed across mitigation, across adaptation, across finance. But what is also very clear, both at this COP and beyond, is that the current solutions that we have may not be adequate to address such challenges. In terms of some of the mature solutions that we have, such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, are not sufficient to actually get us to net zero around mid-century. And also, there are many challenges associated with reliability and access of energy when we over-depend on renewable energy. And also when we come to think of some of the hard-to-abate sectors, such as cement, such as aviation, such as shipping, aluminum, steel, we still don't have practical market scale, widespread, pragmatic solutions that we can adapt to these situations. And also we don't want to risk the inefficient utilization of existing infrastructure, leading to stranded investments in many sectors. And just to really add to this, in light of today's events, there are also very important social considerations that we have to take, and some equity challenges really associated with having purely mitigation-centric approaches in some countries, particularly the developing world, that we need to be very mindful of. And sort of this is the challenges or the general context that we're operating from. So the next question is really, where does Saudi Arabia stand within this context, and how do we operate within it? So very recently, as mentioned by some of my colleagues, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia updated its NDC, which is its nationally determined contribution, with an updated target of reducing emissions by 278 metric tons per annum by 2030. This is over double our previous target, which was 130 metric tons per annum. And furthermore, the kingdom announced its aim to reach net zero by 2060, employing the circular carbon economy approach, both of which took place, both announcements that took place during our flagship launch of both the Saudi Green Initiative and the Middle East Green Initiatives in October of this year, alongside a plethora of initiatives, both on the environment side as well as the energy and climate side, which some of my colleagues already mentioned. And last but not least, we importantly also have COP26, which had a very important element to its conclusion, which is the conclusion of the Paris Rulebook, which are some of the elements that were pending for years now, including Article 6 on cooperative approaches, transparency and reporting, some elements related to NDCs such as timeframes, and now officially kickstarting the implementation period of the Paris Agreement. So these are sort of important areas that we have to have in the back of our heads as the kingdom in our next steps in the short and medium and long term. So this is the general context for the kingdom. These are our recent announcements, but how do we seek to actually reach that emissions reduction target? How do we seek to reach net zero by 2060? And we seek to do so through the circular carbon economy framework. And just to give a very brief description on what the CCE is and why the kingdom is adopting it as a lever to actually reach its targets. So as you can see, like the basic linear carbon economy that has been historically adopted is just a produce and combust model, which leads to a lot of fugitive carbon. And this is what we talk about emissions as a result of of production and combustion. And what the kingdom is adopting and what is core to the CCE is applying circularity as we know it in waste management. So how we reduce, reuse, recycle, but directly applying this logic to carbon, and also adding an important fourth lever, which is that of the remove. So here, as you can see, we have, energy efficiency, we have renewable energy, low carbon fuels, some of the very important, tools that we need to adopt as countries or companies or whom you may have to reduce general, and really this is the mitigation lever, if you may, to reduce the production of CO2 into the atmosphere. But then what you can also do is reuse and recycle and have carbon-based materials, innovative technologies that can actually capture the direct carbon that is in the atmosphere and also reuse it to have a specific economic value through specific products. This is really some of the core principles that we're trying to adopt through the SGI and MGI and general initiatives in the energy and climate sphere in the kingdom. And a very important milestone for the CCE framework was the endorsement by G20 leaders in 2020 during the Riyadh summit. And I think the most important thing that you could get from this slide is the fact that it was described as a holistic, integrated, inclusive, pragmatic approach. So when we think of climate change and when we think of solutions for climate change, a frequent concern is that, we have equity considerations, different countries have different national circumstances, national strengths. How can we be able to adopt policies that align with long-term trajectories for countries? There are different development pathways, not all countries are starting on the same line. And how can we be able to have economically viable, cost-effective, technology agnostic approaches that address this very important challenge of climate change, whilst also taking into consideration, equity, economic diversification, and so on and so forth. So as you can see here, following that endorsement, the CCE national program was also established in the kingdom to ensure some of these aspects are maintained and some of these strategic objectives are focused on within our national context, including, of course, climate protection, but also promoting new industries, creating value from CO2, not just have it be fugitive in the air. Also avoiding significant costs of premature switching to new energy sources. And also, of course, very importantly, being able to sustain affordable and reliable energy access, which in other words is, looking at climate through a very multidisciplinary cross-cutting lens, and also ensuring that all SDGs are also balanced when we think of climate change. And this is just sort of an example of how a CCE national strategy can be structured, and how you have the different levers and different examples of specific initiatives within. Also being mindful of the time, this is just an example of the fact that under each lever, we have multiple initiatives taking place at the national level. Just as an example, we have a carbon capture already facility in Sabiq and one in a sequestration project with Aramco, and these provide carbon for other processes taking place, recycled processes taking place in the country. And as you can also see that the reduce initiatives, with energy efficiency and renewable energy are still the largest in terms of quantity. But in the near term and medium term specifically, we want to make sure that we increase both in the reuse, recycle, as well as the remove. And here we see sort of a narrowing down. So with regards to technologies, we had over 57 technology groups in the country identified, and an internal process took place whereby we considered, what is the high potential of abatement in specific technologies, what can be implemented immediately, what needs R&D, where do we need to reduce cost, in order to identify the following 5 priority technologies for the kingdom in its national program. And I think these priorities were identified for a number of reasons, with the key ethos sort of the CCE in mind, which is we're not just considering what we need now, we're considering what we need in 20 years, in 30 years, and how can we already start to reduce costs associated with these technologies for the country, but also for the region and for the world, so we can address some of the challenges that I mentioned in the first slide, particularly with regards to hard to abate sectors. So for example, the first being hydrogen. Hydrogen is known for having high potential for heavy duty transport, for aviation. Green hydrogen, which is based off renewable energy, also can act as a carrier to overcome some of the challenges associated with batteries. Just as an example, and as a kingdom, we actually have record low renewable costs. We also have low gas costs, costs for natural gas, which also puts us as a very favorable position to be able to be a very effective producer of hydrogen in the future. And next, we also have carbon capture and storage. We have direct air capture. We're also, by virtue of our geography, we have very high storage potential in the kingdom, specifically in our eastern regions, with the potential to have and develop one of the largest, if not the largest, CCUS carbon capture utilization and storage hubs in the world. Just one example of a very effective and a very high potential technology, which we're also focusing on, is carbon cured concrete, which is a recycled example of carbon, where we're thinking this is a carbon product that can actually address one of the most high emitting sectors, which is cement. And if we think about this in the context of abatement, but also very large scale infrastructure projects, which are still needed in developing countries, both within the kingdom and outside. These are sort of the kind of technologies we're focusing on at the CCE national level, because of their high abatement potential, but also because of their ability to support economic development and the social elements that I mentioned previously. And last, but of course not least, I listed some examples of some of the initiatives from the Saudi Green and Middle East Green Initiative, but just to give general context for this, the SGI from a macro level, is that we had hundreds of initiatives taking place nationally, with environmental initiatives and afforestation and combating land degradation, vegetation cover, etc., but also in terms of energy and climate. And the Saudi Green Initiative sort of became like an overarching umbrella. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince wanted us to really show the world how ambitious we can be. And when we pledged net zero by 2060, we also announced the SGI roadmap, which is our way of being able to bring all these initiatives in and have one vehicle that we use to achieve all of these initiatives. And these are just a few examples how we seek to or aim to cut regional emissions, our targets for hydrogen, how we seek to have renewables produce 50% of local power generation by 2030, the 10 billion trees in Saudi, 50 billion trees across the Middle East, joining the global methane pledge. And also a few very interesting MGI initiatives, which are the Regional Initiative for Clean Fuel Cooking Solutions, so clean cooking to more than 750 million people, which obviously has significant implications for climate, but also for healthcare, for giving people opportunities to work, to access energy, and also the Regional Investment Fund for the CCE to promote CCE technologies and actually, have the financing for them in both the region as well as the developing world. And these are just a few examples of some of the SGI and MGI initiatives. You can visit for more information the SaudiGreenInitiative.org website, where in the press release, I can share this with my colleagues from the mission as well for anyone who's interested. There is the actual link of the entire event that was that took place in October, so that you can have more information. So with that, I will leave you, and just again, thank you to all the speakers, and a thank you to our colleagues from the mission for hosting this important event.
Thank you so much, Ms. Noura Al-Isa, for your participation and for your interesting presentation. Our plan to allow time for comments and questions, but because of the strain of time and because of the excellent presentation, tempting information and presented by our distinguished speakers, I have no choice but to conclude this event. After listening to all our distinguished speakers, I would like just to highlight a few points. What Professor Petteri TAALAS said. He mentioned that warming is unprecedented in more than 2,000 years. The record highest in ocean heats. Also, glaciers are melting, sea levels are reaching record highs in 2021. And His Excellency, the SG, presented us with how to become carbon neutral by 2050, which is by focusing on agriculture, world economy, oil and gas dependent economies. I would like also to highlight what Dr. Ayman GHULAM mentioned during his intervention. We will lead the next green era, and he follow up by saying this is not a saying, it is an action we are taking. Ambassador Asim Ahmed shared with us how the Maldives is at the front line of climate change and how different between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees in temperature can cause a disaster. His Excellency also told us how the Maldives is endorsing renewables and aiming for carbon neutrality by 2030, an example all countries should follow. Dr. QURBAN spoke about the importance of preserving wildlife and its role in climate change and initiatives that are contributing to this matter, which are sustainable management and conservation of coastal area environment and expanding of protected areas with integrated management, also breeding of endangered wildlife animals. Dr. Khaled AL-ABDULKADER also told us about international initiative to combat land degradation and habitats loss by recovering more than 50% of what was lost. Saudi will plant 60 million trees and build 50 national parks, starting with planting 10 million native trees in 6 months. Dr. Hany SHAER highlighted a very important point, which is climate change is not the only challenge. Biodiversity loss is deeply interlinked with the climate crisis. Natural-based solutions have a very important role in this matter. Finally, Ms. Noura Al-Isa told us from the energy point of view that Saudi Arabia is aiming to reach net zero emissions by 2060, and by adopting the circular carbon economy, Saudi management to reach major milestones in climate protection, socio-economic impact, and global leadership. I would like to express my sincere thanks to all speakers, and we are honored here in the mission of Saudi Arabia with your presence during this event. And I won't forget also to thank my colleagues in the mission who made this event possible. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have just 1 minute. Yes, I will give you the floor, Dr. Ahmed.
Yes, good afternoon, dear Dr. Abdulaziz, Professor Abdulaziz. I think you made the closing remark, but I just wanted, before you close, to to express my deep appreciation to you and to the permanent mission of Saudi Arabia for organizing this important and timely event, which has really highlighted how the MENA region is particularly vulnerable to climate change, as well as showcasing Saudi Arabia's important green initiatives. It is a laudable example of a responsible leadership and sharing the global responsibility of addressing the climate challenge. As the incoming COP president, Egypt appreciates such national and regional initiatives and best practices that seek to advance climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. I would like to express a deep appreciation to the speakers that we heard today for highlighting the growing impacts of climate change and for emphasizing the importance of early warning as well as preventive and anticipatory action. And we appreciate the emphasis on the importance of scientific data as well as information gathering and exchange. Let me say that I'm very pleased that a number of interventions highlighted the importance of seeking synergies between the processes related to climate change, food security, and water security. And we believe more needs to be done to break the silos and deliver as one while leaving no one behind. In order to achieve this, Egypt has been working with a number of countries as well as the WMO, whom I salute the Secretary General for his presentation today, in order to organize a series of events on the global water crisis to seek solutions to this crisis and to promote an integrated and inclusive approach in the lead up to COP27, as well as the midterm review conference of the UN Decade of Action for Water taking place in New York in March 2023. So thank you very much, Ambassador Dr. Abdulaziz, and to all the speakers. And I hope I didn't come too late in making this statement. Thank you.
No, not at all. Thank you so much, Dr. Ihab, Ambassador of Egypt, the permanent representative of Egypt, for attending our event and for your comments. Really grateful for what you said, and it is just the time we want to just to make sure that we do not exceed the time. So we have an excellent speakers who really made this event a very interesting one. And special thanks to you, Dr. Ihab, for your presence. Again, thank you all of you. We really appreciate it, and I wish you a very nice day. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.